Hi, I'm Silvia Saige, and you can find me on YouTube at Sexy Funny Raw for my sex education podcast, or you can find me on Twitter at Silvia Saige XXX, Instagram at the Silvia Saige, or TikTok Silvia Saige 3, or the real Silvia Saige.
Start with the AprilMilfs.com MILF of the Month. Congratulations. Have you worked a lot for the
Thank you.
company? For MILF.com?
Um, I have worked for MILF.com in the past, yes. But this was a huge honor still. So I was very happy to be honored in any way of number one MILF. I know I'm among some of the best in the industry, so very flattering.
Today they released part one of a film you did for them, The Price of Perfect.
Oh, yes.
Can you tell me about that?
So that scene will be basically I'm new to the neighborhood and I'm coming in to basically interview to be the, mom of the month for the neighborhood committee. And the committee and all of us wind up having, I can't remember what they call it. It's non-reaction sex is basically what it is. So there is sex happening the entire time, but no one is acknowledging the sex. So it's a kind of comedic type of scene, honestly, because we're just having to keep coming up with dialogue and be super creative while still having sex, but not acknowledging the sex in the slightest. So it was fun.
So all the dialogue is completely ad-libbed?
Most of the dialogue is ad lib. There's very little script in the beginning, kind of like getting us going with everything, but then it's complete ad lib from there on out. So it was really fun. And the other actors were great with coming up with stuff too. We bounced off of each other really well.
And was it shot like a typical film production where you do 3 or 4 days, you dialogue, then you do sex and so forth?
Yeah, for the most part. But there's so much dialogue throughout because you kind of have to keep the storyline going. So we took a few breaks, but it was shot mainly just like in one big scene. So
And when they shot the commercial scene, did the
mhm.
director kind of just let you guys go, or did you block everything out first and then just kind of go with it?
When you mean the scene with
The sex
the
scene.
casino scene?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So they definitely, because that was so we were in a really big warehouse for that scene. And so we only had just that backdrop. So the camera guy really couldn't go around us. We had to stay pretty stationary because we had very little of the backdrop. And if he would have panned out at all, you would have seen a million
Right.
other things in the studio behind us. So
At this point in your career, do you have a preference between doing a lot of dialogue and stuff? Do you just prefer I guess, gonzo stuff?
yeah, I actually love doing the dialogue. It's probably my favorite part of being an adult actress. I know that sounds weird. It's not the sex because I don't feel like the sex is necessarily real sex. It's very performance style.
Oh,
We're often
absolutely.
opening up and things like that. So for me, the fun part is the dialogue and just getting to be fun and silly and make up these characters. I love it.
You're in an industry that tends to prefer new girls, yet the MILF genre is one of the most popular niches. Why do you think that is?
Yes. Well, I hope that the reason that that the MILF category is the top category is because people like seeing, mature women still enjoying themselves. It gets to be a little creepy to me when we make even the 18-year-old girls look even younger than they are. So it's actually very wholesome to think that we are the number one search category, that we are mature women and, not necessarily portraying this innocence vibe that I think went on for a really long time. So I love that people are getting turned on by strong, powerful women. I think it's great.
And without kissing your butt, you're a survivor in this business. Most girls only last 6 months, if that. What do you contribute that
Yeah.
to?
So I am 9 years in. I'm a 9-year veteran at this point. I honestly think because I had other goals, I am a stand-up comedian first and foremost. So my goal was always comedy, and I saw adult as a way to kind of fund my comedy career. So until my comedy career starts to make as much money as my adult film career does, I, I don't ever want to let that go. So I'm always still striving and climbing for a bigger, you know, piece of the pie, really. I mean, everything I do in adult is based for my comedy career. I talk about my comedy career. I talk about the porn career in my comedy. I've done porns that are comedy related. I've even done virtual reality where I have sex with an audience member at my comedy show. So it's all kind of intertwined. And because I have that as my driving force, I just never left the industry because it kept making me more and more money. And the more fame I got with adult films, the more fame I gained with comedy also. So they just kept going hand in hand. And I'm not done chasing that dream yet. So
You mentioned stand-up. How did you get started in stand-up and all that?
So I actually started in stand-up comedy about 2 years before I ever moved to Los Angeles in my hometown of Kansas City. I worked in healthcare for nearly a decade prior to that, but I wasn't happy in my life. I was struggling a lot with, a lot of mental issues, and I found stand-up comedy as a way to vent to people and not pay a therapist. It was like a form of therapy for me being on stage, and I felt a sense of love and acceptance from the comedy community. And so I said I'm going to pursue it, and that's why I initially moved to Los Angeles, was to pursue stand up. And then I found adult films within 3 months of living in Los Angeles, and it kind of I say it saved my life all the time. I know it sounds corny, but the financial freedom I've gotten from working in adult has made everything else in my life so much simpler.
I don't know how to say this. I hope I say this properly, but does it take more balls to get up and do stand-up or to shoot a sex scene?
1000% stand up. I think almost anybody can work in adult films. I say that because I know a lot of people have maybe some physical things that would restrict them from that, but you don't necessarily have to be talented to be a star. You just have to be willing to have sex on camera. I certainly was not a good actress my first few years, and I really had to learn that porn was a performance. Comedy, on the other hand, takes a lot of grit, a lot of hard work. I mean, I still don't make hardly any money in comedy. When I do, it's a couple $1,000s for a week, and I couldn't live off that if I tried.
Growing up, did you want attention? Did you maybe start telling jokes so people would pay attention to you?
Yeah, honestly, I had a very loving family, but my brother was always the shining star. He's a very intelligent, very gifted individual, musically and otherwise. And my life kind of revolved around being his little sister and going to all of his accomplishments. And I kind of joke about it, but I'm like, this is the first thing I've ever been good at,
Yeah.
So I really do enjoy it. And it's the first time I'm not in somebody else's shadow and I get to shine my own light. So, yeah.
Was there a week, a process, a month where you thought maybe I could do stand-up as to actually getting on the stage and doing it for the first time?
I mean, when I did stand up for the first time, I wasn't even prepared to do it that night. I had actually gone with a friend and I was watching him do stand up comedy. And he kind of threw my name into the hat, if you will. And they called me to come up on stage, and I had no material, no preparation. And I just went up and spoke my truth, and which is what I still do on stage. And like I said, people were so accepting of it. And I felt so much love from it that I was like, this is it. This is what I have to pursue. It was finally my outlet, and it was a healthy outlet for the first time, because I've had a lot of very unhealthy habits throughout my life as well.
You mentioned the adult part of your life contributes to your stand-up routine. Do people expect
Yes.
that from you when they see you? Does it have to be, they expect dirty jokes?
I don't even say, because I don't necessarily do a ton of dirty jokes. I really just tell stories about my life. I tell stories about how I went from working in healthcare to working in the adult industry. So I think what people might expect to see from me on stage is not what they're going to see on stage. My stand-up is very informative and honest, as opposed to dick jokes, just a different. I like to think that my comedy is very smart. And that was part of the other question where I think I lost that was comedy is so much harder because there's so much thought and practice and hard work that goes into it. It's day in and day out with very little reward. So it is definitely something that makes you really make sure you want it in life, you know, because there's, like I said, just such little reward that if it's not something, it's your one driving force, then why even bother, you know?
For you, a good routine, does that mean your jokes are hitting, your material's clicking? Does it just mean you're comfortable, the audience?
A good routine for me means that yes, of course, that my material is hitting, that they feel identified with me. That's to me what I think a good set is, because I feel as an adult film actress, a lot of times I'm ostracized in life just because of the stigma that comes with the adult industry. And I feel like when I do comedy, if I can make them identify with me a little bit, kind of see life from my point of view, and maybe, you know, even accept what I'm doing in life, then that's exactly that's a good set for me. When I can make them kind of identify with me a little bit and relate to my life and not make me such this othered creature.
Yeah. You just kind of touched on it, but I'm guessing you do meet and greets when you're done. Are people surprised, like when they meet you afterwards, that like maybe because you're an adult performer, they expect something
Yeah.
else?
I do think I absolutely do meet and greets. And I think what I hear the most from people is just really is that they're like, wow, I just learned so much from you. I get a lot of thank yous after set, you know, that they have a lot of takeaways from this, or maybe they have learned like a trick, you know. I do talk about different ways they can please women, you know, in my act. So I get a lot of that, of like, thank you, we'll take that home type of thing. So yeah, but I think in general, they just are excited to see that I'm a real person. You know, I think a lot of times that people get into their brains about, you know, any type of celebrity, that they're just this untouchable, when I'm really, especially on a comedy stage, I'm so human, you know, and I think that they see that and enjoy it. So
When it comes to preparing material for a comedian, do you ever have stuff you feel might be too personable, but people will relate to it and it's funny that you have to share it?
yeah, I'm actually currently working on my hour special. And in my hour special, I will talk about my childhood molestation and rape. Things that are hard for me to talk about. I get a trigger in my voice just saying it to you. But really feel, because it is so relatable to so many women, 1 in 6 women will be a victim of sexual assault in their life. So those are topics that are tough for me to talk about, but I feel like if I can make them talkable and relatable, and kind of put it into people's faces, what it is, what sex assault is, that I can do a lot of good with it.
Where can people see the special and all that?
Well, I haven't taped it yet. I will be taping it next month. And then we'll be putting the special up on OnlyFans.
You mentioned, I hope you mentioned, I got this right, that you wanted to host SNL or the AVN Awards. Is that true?
I would love to do both, actually. Yeah.
Which one would be more terrifying for you, hosting AVN or hosting SNL?
Definitely SNL, just because there's so much work that goes into it. When you host SNL, it's all week that you're there for, you know, 12, 14-hour days, studying and rehearsing and going through skits with other people. So I think it would be the most terrifying, but the most exciting.
And if you hosted AVN, or when you host AVN, uh, will people expect, or should people expect, dirty jokes? Because I've been to literally 30 AVN shows, and sometimes I think it's weird when the comedian tries to just talk dirty jokes to people in the adult business.
Yeah, what I don't appreciate it is what I see the same thing when I go to AVN, and I feel like it's a lot of making fun of our community instead of uplifting it. So I would like to think that's what I would do if I were hosting. It wouldn't be so many, you know, dumb blonde jokes or, you know, gaping butthole jokes, as it would be of empowering us in a comedic way. You can still be empowering and be funny. You know, I feel so many comics have gotten into such a degrading way of doing stand up, and I have just never been mean to an audience member. I don't pick on people. It's there's a way to be funny and still be positive. So I would like to bring that to AVN if they're willing.
You have a podcast. Sexy Funny Raw. Tell me about that.
I do. So Sexy Funny Raw is a podcast I've had for 6 years now, but recently I have brought on a new co-host and I'm wildly excited about it because he is a public health doctor. He's also a professor at a local school here in Los Angeles. Out of respect for his colleagues, we do not mention that on the show, but he brings so much to the table. It's a sex education show, so all of our episodes are some way based in sex education, whether it's a lesson in consent or a lesson in STIs, or ways to better your sex life, spice things up. We have other comedians that come on the show and other adult film actors that come on the show, 1 to 2 guests usually, and then myself and the doctor. And we make sex a relatable and topical subject. I feel like a lot of people are not comfortable with sexuality at all, don't even feel comfortable talking about it. And so we do it in a way that makes it relatable and not scary and not shameful. And I think it sends a really phenomenal message. And one of the favorite things about it is I don't make money on the podcast. I've been paying for it out of my own pocket for 6 years. I would like to make money on it, but I get messages from women all over the world, in the Philippines and elsewhere, telling me how much the show means to them, how they don't get this kind of education anywhere else. And I will do the show for the rest of my life, paying for it every month if I have to, just because I think the message that we put out is so important.
You do a lot of research before?
So the doctor loves research. So he will do a lot of research on our guest and all of the topics. I am like you. I also like coming in blind. I like to ask a lot of questions. And oops, are you still there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I went blank for a second. But I like to ask a lot of questions and make them feel comfortable. And I try and let people know that there is nothing off the table in our podcast, that they're allowed to talk about anything they want. And if they have said something that maybe they were uncomfortable sharing, I have a great editing team and we'll go through and take out anything that makes anybody uncomfortable. But I feel like I'm pretty good at getting people to open up just because I'm so open and honest with everything that I feel like they're like, well, if you're talking about that, then yeah, I'll share this story. So.
And where can people find the podcast?
You can find it on YouTube at Sexy Funny Raw, or you can find it on all streaming networks.
And how frequently do you post new shows and all that?
We post a show every week. They come out every Wednesday.
And if people want to be on your show, do you have an email or do they go to social media or YouTube?
So it's up to this point, I've only really had my own friends, my own porn star friends and comedian friends come on the show. But if anyone else wants to come on the show, they're more than welcome to, send an email or just even leave a comment on the YouTube channel. I read all the comments. So I'm the one checking those and I would be happy to bring somebody on.
Do you have a hit list of people you'd like to be on the show?
You know what's funny is I had a hit list, but I've had the show for 6 years now. So I feel like I've gotten a lot of those out of the way. There's definitely still some names I would love to have on the show. And I would, of course, like to get bigger and bigger and more celebrities because I know by the statistics on my page, the bigger the celebrity is, obviously, the more views. So the bigger we can get and the broader reach we can make of this positive sexual message, I would love.
And you mentioned you have your porn star friends and your friends. Does your doctor friend have a lot of his friends on the show?
We've actually never had his doctor friends on the show, but he actually, because he's a doctor of public health, he works in sex work. That was actually his main field of study. So he has a lot of adult friends or adult performer friends as well. So they might be mutual friends, but yeah, no doctors are coming on just yet.
How did you meet him? How did that come up?
Actually, it was a mutual friend of mine, of ours, who is an adult film actress, is how we met. And we all went to dinner one night and he was, obviously telling what his thesis was on, which was male sex workers in New Orleans. And I was like, wow, that's so interesting. And then he started telling me his story and his mother was a sex worker. And it was just it all piled on, and he has so much empathy and understanding for that world. And I thought, what a perfect thing. I've been looking for a doctor to come on my show and give it some, real like truth behind it, because before it was just me telling my stories and what I knew, and now he gives it some validity, so I asked him to come on the show, and he's been with me for about 6 months now. It's been great.
Let's try and make you some money to pay for everything. Tell me about your OnlyFans.
My OnlyFans handle is Silvia Saige XXX, and that's my paid page. However, I do have a free page that is just Silvia Saige. OnlyFans, oh my gosh, changed my life. Love it so much. I have had my OnlyFans for several years now, but it wasn't until I got lucky enough to be chosen to do a documentary for Hulu about OnlyFans. And I was one of the 5 people featured on it, and I was the only adult film actress. So once that hit and came out in 2020, it drastically changed everything for me. And OnlyFans has been a lifesaver, literally. It's great. I love it so much. I have a free page and a paid page, and people are free to hang out and chat on the free page as much as they want. But then when you want to see the good stuff, you can pop over to the paid side.
When it comes to content, do you shoot what you want to shoot or what you think will sell?
Oh, that is a great question, actually. A little bit of both. I definitely don't. The mommy scenes are not my favorite, so I still shoot those for companies because that's what they need. But when I'm shooting my own content, it's usually just stuff I enjoy, just 2 middle-aged people having sex. And I do love a lot of foot stuff, and that does sell great. So I make a lot of that, but yeah.
Success for branding on OnlyFans, do you think people come to watch you get boned or for your personality?
Well, you know what? In the very beginning, it was coming to watch sex for sure. It was for masturbation videos and that type of content. However, now that I'm more vocal on social media, I'm very vocal on TikTok. I post several times a day there as well, and on Instagram. I think people are seeing more of my personality, and now they're kind of making a switch for less nudity, and they want more of the comedy. So, which is nice because I feel like myself as a comic, I have kind of come into my own these past few years as well. So it feels like a natural transition to do more comedy and to be posting more real life stuff.
Well, we're going to go slightly off subject, but I noticed on social media you're posting a lot of Q&A questions.
Yes.
Are they just random stuff your fans send in, or do you have like a question of the day, question of the week?
Yeah, they are just questions that are usually in the comment section, or there's a little section where they can actually put in questions to a Q&A, but very little people know about that on TikTok. So a lot of times it's just people in the comment section, which is why I always say I always read all the comments, and people are like, oh, you shouldn't read them because you'll see the negative stuff. I'm like, oh, I just delete those. And then I go through and I answer the questions of people that I think, have at least a little respect or something to learn. There's that as well.
And do you find for yourself you have a different fan base on TikTok versus Twitter versus Instagram?
Yes. Yes. Honestly, the great thing about TikTok is it will put me in front of people that would have never otherwise even searched me, just because the algorithm is so interesting, and with hashtags and everything else, or if you put a song behind it, they will just pop you up in front of people, like I said, who would never even think to look at porn, A lot of women. I feel like I've gained a much larger female base through TikTok than I did with any other platform.
Do you ever have any issues? Sometimes when I post clips on there, I have to bleep out the sex words, or they're
Yes.
getting hassled for it.
Yeah, that is actually one of the most inconvenient things, because I'm double, triple checking,
Right.
the video before I put it up. Every time I say sex, it's turned to segs, or something like that. And then, 1 out of every 20 posts, I will post something and I'm like, oh man, I didn't cover up the word porn. And then I've got to take down the whole video and start over again. It's kind of crazy to me that there are such stipulations on words, especially just the word of sex. That's so mind blowing to me. But who am I? I'm not the dictator of TikTok.
And what are your social media handles?
They can find me on Instagram at the Silvia Saige, or I have my TikTok, which is Silvia Saige 3 or the real Silvia Saige. I'm on Twitter at Silvia Saige XXX and YouTube at Sexy Funny Raw.
And going back to OnlyFans, do you do custom work?
Yes, I do so much custom work. I'm filming customs 3 to 4 times a day just to keep up with a backlog. So yes, a lot.
Craziest
I will
request,
film someone I get done here, actually.
craziest request you got for a custom?
I don't feel like I get a whole lot of crazy requests. I feel like the requests are pretty minimum. I feel like I'm making crazier content than they're requesting. So I love anal. It's my big thing. So I've got this big anal cone. So that's my favorite, is like seeing how far I can make it down that cone. But yeah, that's what I think of like a crazy thing. But all my requests are pretty much, basic, a lot of foot stuff, but I love that stuff. So
And would you ever consider shooting a scene with a fan?
I would, but I don't know how it works with legalities and all of that. So that's the only thing I would worry about, is the legalities of shooting with a fan. But I absolutely would.
Where are you from originally?
I was born in Kansas City, Missouri, and still go back. I'm still a Chiefs fan. I'm still a season ticket holder. All my family still lives there. So I'm actually going back next week. I have 6 shows that I'm doing in Kansas City at the Improv. So
Did you go to public school, private school?
I went to public school. Yes, very, very small high school. I graduated with 97 people.
In grade school, do you have a favorite subject?
I loved history, English, anything but math, really. Never my subject.
I know you're really young at that point. Do you have any idea what you want to do with the rest of your life?
I used to think when I was a little girl, I wanted to be a lawyer because I thought I was really good at arguing my point, which interesting. I still argue my point quite often. But I think when I got a little bit older and I started getting, seeing boys and having interest in boys, the thought of going to law school was just too overwhelming. I was much more focused on men.
In high school, were you a popular girl, a loner, a geek, a nerd?
Um, Kind of a little bit of everything. I certainly was not the most popular girl in school, but I was everybody's friend. I hung out with, the cool kids, the dorks, the jocks, the music kids. I was in, band. I was in marching band. I was in choir. I was in the plays, but I also played sports, so I never really considered myself popular. I just was kind of an everybody's kid. I played with everybody. Still
Popular
do.
with popular with the boys?
Yes, a little bit. Again wasn't the most pretty girl in school. There were definitely, the popular girls that had all the boyfriends, but I had one boyfriend in high school and I dated him all throughout high school. So yeah, and he was much older. I should not have been dating him, but
Did you get bullied in school?
yes, tremendously actually. When I talk about high school, that was the last 3 years, sophomore, junior, and senior, that are good experiences for me. I actually moved high schools after my freshman year, and I endured nothing but abuse that entire year just because I was a pretty freshman and the girls did not like me and I was a virgin and people were spreading all sorts of rumors about me that I'd slept with all these boys, and it was a lot, to the point where I would come home crying every day and finally just begged my parents to move me out of that school system. So yes, a lot of bullying, which is why I probably became everybody's friend.
Go to your prom?
I did go to my prom, but I ended up going solo because my date got too drunk at dinner and took a cab home. So I
Do you
went to
typically,
prom alone.
do you graduate high school, I'm guessing, do you go to college at that point? Do you?
I did initially. I went to a community college right out of the gate, and I ended up getting kicked out of community college. I was not the best student. And then a few years later, I went back and I got my technical degree from a technical college as an X-ray technician. That's how I worked in medicine for the next decade after that.
And you have your crazy college life? Did you sexually experiment and do all that stuff?
No, because I didn't go to university. So I drove, to class every day from my home and, I would drive to work afterwards. So it wasn't a college experience per se. I wasn't in any sororities. Hell, I wasn't even on a campus. So did not have that experience, but I was definitely still crazy and, going out drinking and being promiscuous, but not in the same way. It wasn't a college experience.
And up to that point in your life, had you done any kind of modeling, anything?
Oh yes. My mom actually had me modeling from the age of 8. So I was doing runway modeling and print and things of that nature. And then when I got a little bit older, I started doing some lingerie modeling. So me getting into porn weirdly wasn't so far off from what my life was. I'd also worked at restaurants. I'd worked at Hooters when I turned 18. And I later got a job at Twin Peaks, which is also a restaurant. So, and I was doing all these lingerie modeling and, implied nudes and things of that nature. And I'd been using my looks for a long time. In fact, that's really all I'd been using my whole life. So coming into adult, I don't think anyone was truly, truly shocked. They were like, okay, seems like a natural progression of where she was going with this.
Did you get some, going back a step, did you get some maybe jealousy from other girls because you were doing modeling, you're a runway model, and they were just a cheerleader? And
I really don't think so. I never really felt jealousy from any like females in my life. I think a lot of people saw that I was living in my brother's shadow. I know my family certainly did. Um, so I think a lot of times it was almost people felt bad for me. And were just trying to like make me see that there was something great about me, even if it was just my beauty. I don't think anyone ever wanted to take that away from me because they could see what all was being taken away from me living in my brother's shadows. So,
and when you were going to school, the medical school, is that when you were working at Twin Peaks and Hooters and all that, or was there another job?
yeah, actually, when I was going to school, I was a bank teller. I had worked at Hooters when I first turned 18, when I was like in community college the first time. Um, but yeah, when I was going to school, it was regular, normal job. I also was engaged to be married and had a home. And so I would, go work at the bank and then I would go to class and I would go home and just living that white picket fence life and doing all the things I was supposed to be doing. Meanwhile, I was wildly miserable.
Do you remember the first time you saw something adult related? A magazine, a movie? Was it Showtime, HBO?
Oh, yeah. I actually do a whole bit about it, my stand-up, but I had HBO late night. We had a TV in my bedroom, and so I would watch the late night porns on Cinemax or HBO growing up. And I wasn't masturbating because I didn't know what masturbation was, but I knew I liked it, and I knew it made me feel like I was like melting butter in my pants, and I was like, I like that feeling. So, yeah, I watched a lot of late night porn. I stumbled upon my dad's dirty magazines. My dad always had porn VHS tapes in his top dresser drawer. I knew exactly where they were because the change was in there also, the change jar. So it was a drawer we weren't supposed to get in, but we definitely did. But my family was very open with sexuality to the point where I remember being a little kid sitting at the dinner table with my family and they're all having these conversations and laughing. And I was like, I don't think I'm old enough to hear this, but sex was never a taboo subject in our house, and it still isn't, which is why I think me working in porn now, my family is Well, they don't love it. And I will never say like, oh, they love that I work in porn. My dad, of course, says, you're my baby girl. I wish you wouldn't. But I understand why you do. And I love and respect you. And I'm proud of you no matter what. So because I had that open dialogue with sex, nothing was ever really taboo for us. It was just a matter of like finding it and learning it. And my parents were open about like when we started having sex also and what we needed to do to be safe. So my dad took me to go get birth control and took my brother to go get a giant box of condoms, you know? So we were being smart about it the whole time.
When you saw that material, did the thought ever cross your mind that I could do that?
You know, I don't think it ever did at the time. I joke in my stand up that, you know, this is all like I was groomed by God my whole life. That was just a part of it. And I should have seen these flags. But no, I don't think I ever truly thought I could do that. And also I didn't realize it was a job. You know, I didn't really know what I was watching. I was just still so numb to it. And I never saw myself as a sexy woman. You know, I don't know. I was not, there was always my friends that were so much prettier than me and so much more popular that they were the pretty girls. So it was never an option that I was going to live off my looks ever.
So how do you make the transition into this wonderful industry? Because I mean, you've got a degree and everything, and you're working, and
Yeah. Well, I was moving out to Los Angeles to do stand up. And unfortunately, I had no plan when I got to LA other than I had found an apartment and I had enough money to cover the term of my lease. And I was like, well, I'll just get out there and I'll figure it out. And unfortunately, I got a DUI the week I was leaving in Kansas. And so all of the money I had went to paying lawyers and staying out of jail. So I could move. And when I got to LA, I had next to no money. And so I immediately just started getting jobs. I was bartending at night and I was working in a construction company during the day doing their books. And meanwhile, doing no stand up and just trying to survive. And I was miserable. And a friend of mine from my hometown called and she said, hey, I'm going to come to LA and I'm going to do porn. And she was like, can I stay with you? And I was like, girl, whatever. Like, I just need help with rent. So come on out. And I saw her make like 10 grand in her first week. And meanwhile, I'm just, you know, I'm counting pennies, you know, in the background. And I'm like, if I could just do 1 to 2 movies a month, you know, like 3 or 4 movies a month, I'll be able to survive and no one has to know. And so that's exactly how I came in. I thought I would be hush hush about it, you know, that I could just make a few movies and nobody would know, but that's not how the internet works. So people found out, but I fell in love with it after a few years. I did not fall in love with porn right away. It was definitely a means to make ends meet for me in the beginning. But 3 or 4 years in is where I really found my stride and I started to get popular. I started falling in love with porn and the freedom that it gave me. And yeah, 9 years later, here we are.
prior to getting into business, had you had any preconceived notions about the adult entertainment industry?
Oh, yeah. And I think I had the same thought that most people have is that it's a dirty place, that it's seedy, you know, that all these people are just walking STDs. I definitely had a really, really bad thought of what the porn industry was prior to getting into it, which is why I think I'm so vocal about it now, is because I want people to realize what it is and what it isn't. And maybe it was that several years ago, but the porn industry that I am in now is nowhere near chaos. If anything, it's the most business oriented sex you will ever have. You know?
You go to do your first movie. At what point does it hit you that I'm doing a porn film, basically?
Um, well, I knew. I was so lucky. My best friend was in my film with me, the one who had come out to stay with me. So we had had the same agent. Obviously, I didn't know any better. And so we got to do that first movie together, and it didn't feel like a lot of pressure. It didn't feel weird because it was with my friend. So it just felt almost natural, but not. I guess there were cameras there, and I'm not typically with women, but she made it very easy for me to feel comfortable.
So you guys were lovers before that?
Oh, definitely not. No, I had actually never had sex with a woman prior to that day. I had kissed women, not her though, but we were just really good friends. So just having the companionship there made it easy and not feeling alone, I guess.
And you'd never had any sexual thoughts about her or anything prior to that?
Oh my gosh, no. I think when she met me, she did, because she would always say, one of these days I'm gonna fuck you. And she did. So she was more bisexual than I was. And I don't necessarily know if I consider myself bisexual at this point because I only want to date men, but I'm definitely open to sleeping with women now, and I wasn't in the beginning. So
You go to do your first boy girl film. For sake of discussion, we'll call the guy Johnny. He walks
yeah.
in and says, "Hi, I'm Johnny. I'll be working with you today." Did that turn
Mhm.
you on, scare you?
Um, I wouldn't say scared. I don't think I've ever felt scared when on set. I think just trying to bond with somebody, because for me, I want to have some sort of connection with them to sleep with them. So I really try and like get to know somebody in the very few minutes that you have. And a lot of times the producers don't want the male talent talking to the females while they're getting their hair and makeup done because they don't want to distract them. But I'm like, please come in here and talk to me so we can have, I got to find something in common with you, some common
Yeah.
interest, something I like about you. So I've never, yeah, never scared, but it's just a rush to get to know them.
At this point in your career, do you prefer working with the seasoned people or do you prefer working with the new guys?
Oh, definitely seasoned. I love working with our male performers who know what they're doing and they know timing and they know where the camera is. I think a lot of times the new people forget that there is a camera and they're just there to have sex. And I'm like, that's not what this is. We have to pay attention to that guy and where he is in the room and what position we are. And so but with the vets, they're like, oh, boop, bop, bop. They just move you right around. It's a lot less work.
You kind of touched on it earlier, but from having some preconceived notions to shooting it, at what point do you realize that, hey, this is legit and this is real? Like when you do your first couple of movies.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, that point is when it goes on the internet because I'm like, okay, now anybody can watch this and it's really out there and I can't take it back. So I guess there was that moment and I won't lie, for the first few years especially, I used to have what I called like guilt waves that would just strike me and feel like they were just knocking me down. And I was like, I would feel so guilty of like, what have I done to my family? That type of thing. I don't really have those anymore. But I mean, I definitely have those moments where you're like, holy shit, it's out there, it's done. I'm fucking for the world to see. That it is a lot to take in, but at this point, I'm so comfortable with myself and my life and my family, and we've all come to a point of acceptance with it that I don't have that anymore. I don't feel that the guilt waves.
Correct me if I'm wrong. One of the clips I saw on social media, did you not like some of the stuff you did originally? Maybe you wish you did it later in your career?
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff early on that I wish I wouldn't have done. I had a really bad agent in the beginning, Derek Hay. I would throw his name under the bus any day of the week. Just a horrible human and didn't respect women, made us feel like we were cattle, made me feel like I worked for him instead of vice versa, which is not how it is when you're an agent. And so a lot of stuff I did not want to be doing, but I was so desperate for money because, like, again, porn for me was always financial. So I was always a struggle of how I get more money. And I was doing some of the seediest, most disgusting things. And it was the one, he was putting me on those jobs. And I felt I couldn't say no. I didn't know I had the power to not do these things. So yeah, there's a lot I regret early on in my career. And I wish it wasn't on the internet, but you know, can't take it back.
Did things get better when you got a new agent, or did something happen where you change your perspective?
Yeah. So obviously, when I got away from him, I went a few years without an agent, which were not very good for me either. But again, when most people would have left, I still had that comedy, goal in mind. So I'm like, well, I have to keep pressing on. I'm still making money doing this. And once you go into adult, there isn't a lot of exit, like I have a college degree but I think even now I've worked in porn, I couldn't go back to working in the hospital. I get recognized anywhere. So it, once you're in, you're in. At least for me, I was like, I've made these movies. I'm dying on this cross. I've got to
Right.
keep going. But I did eventually get new agents, and I got agents that would give me, advice. I got female agents. That's important. Kendra Lust was my first female agent. And that was a big uptick in my career because she would give me tips. And she was the first person to really be honest with me and say, look, you're being a dead fish, like you need to perform, like this is a performance. So that upped my level as a performer. I started paying attention to things and really taking the adult industry seriously. And then the career just skyrocketed from there. And I've been lucky. Sandra came in and swooped me up a few years ago, and she is just a heaven sent. That woman goes to bat for me over anything, and she always has my back. And it's really it's a whole different industry now. I feel like I run the show finally. I didn't feel that for a long time in the beginning.
Sandra's with OC Modeling, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And if people want to book you for work, they contact her there?
Yes, they can contact her at OC Modeling. Mm-hmm.
And you touched briefly on the performance. Do you think fans sometimes forget that this is a performance? Because a lot of times people think that you're just crazy thing.
Yeah, I think fans forget that a lot, actually, because, they'll see things like I don't do ATM, ass to mouth. I don't do it, but you'll see me do it in my films because it's edited. They will pull out of my butt and go wash off and then come back over and stick it into my mouth. And fans are like, oh, well, I've seen you do it on film. And I'm like, no, you've seen the magic of editing, sweetheart. That's what you've seen. Like we're making a movie at the end of the day. I think a lot of people forget that. People are very quick to tell me I'm not an actor. And I'm like, oh, sweetie, I am an actress. Let me tell you.
And do you think today's society, because of the internet and social media, almost use adult material for training purposes about when it comes to sex?
Yeah, actually, we talk about that a lot on my podcast about how, a lot of sex education these days is coming from the adult films, and what a horrible place to learn it, because you're not getting real sex. For one, you're getting theatrics, and for two, you're not getting the conversations that we have prior, where we're getting we're checking off a checklist of what everyone's comfortable with beforehand. They don't see that. They also don't see the aftercare of what we do to our bodies, the upkeep that we have to do, how often we're testing. They don't see all sides of it. They see, this one crazy gonzo scene, and they're like, well, that's sex. And you're like, that is not sex. So I think that is another reason I think the podcast is so important, is like stepping away from pornography being a teaching moment, because it's certainly not that. Cherie DeVille makes a good reference where she said it would be like if you watch Fast and Furious to learn how to drive. It's not driving school. It's a wild show. That's what porn is. It's not sex. It's a crazy version of animated and very theatrical written sex. No one's getting actually stuck in garbage disposals while getting fucked from behind. But I've got that scene out there, So
I'm guessing you're dating. Is it difficult for you to date a civilian and be in this business?
oh gosh. Yeah. I have not had I don't think I've had a boyfriend since I've been in the industry. I've probably dated a few people, but no one that's ever really stuck around. I think in the beginning, guys kind of see it as like a trophy, they like to show you off to their friends for the first few weeks. And then once everyone's kind of seen, that they're dating a porn star, they're like, yeah, but are you going to like marry a porn star? And he's like, yeah, no, of course not. And, done with me. So I feel a lot of that. I feel sometimes that I'm I'm trophied around for a man for a bit. And then when he realizes that his friends are going to know that I fucked thousands of people, and he's like, yeah, that's not really what I want to take home. So there's definitely a stigma around it, which makes it not a lonely place, because I definitely don't say I'm lonely, but an interesting place to be in life.
Do you find when you get go to be intimate with these people, that sounds bad, I'm sorry, uh, they're expecting this wild, crazy Silvia Saige sex, and you're going to be all over?
Yeah, I think they do expect that sometimes. That is not what you're going to get. I mean, you will get, I am obviously very, I'm very sexual person, and I enjoy sex, but I'm not, I'm not hanging from the rafters, so still
But,
pretty vanilla when it comes to my real sex.
so then you kind of just answered it, but how much different sex-wise is you versus Silvia?
Um, well, I'd say Sylvia on films is very aggressive because I'm usually playing the older woman, the mom, the teacher, something of that nature. But in my real life, I love being thrown up against the wall. Like, take away my power, that's what I'm into. That's why I also love being with older men in my real life, as opposed to in my films. I'm often with, you know, people in their early 20s. I would much prefer a man in his 40s or 50s to take control of me.
And being in this industry, has your perspective of sex changed?
Yes. Definitely. I think my perspective on sex has changed. Not, um, not so much that because I was still promiscuous, before the porn industry. So I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying that I take love out of it, because I definitely still think that, you can make love and have sex, and they're two different things. But I think for me, what changed is, especially because we have so many different co-stars, is that sex for me became something I could almost like step out of my body and find something about this person I've just met that is, enticing to me, and I've got to somehow be turned on to this by this person. So it made it to where I can get a lot sexualer very quickly, as opposed to prior. I think I was more like, oh, we've got to have, a few dates before we have sex. And I'm like, oh, I can fuck you 20 minutes after I meet you. So that it changes in that narrative.
Uh, do you find that if you get into a serious relationship, that sex has to be a big part of the relationship because you go to work and you do it?
I mean, I think so. For me, I truly enjoy sex. So if I'm in a relationship, I want our sex life to also be thriving. And I don't shoot that much for other companies anymore. So I truly don't have a lot of, film sex any longer. So I want, you know, multiple times a day with my partner. I love that, or multiple times a week at least. Maybe not a day, but I have a very healthy sexual appetite that I would like my partner to fill. Yes.
Forget the fact that you're an adult performer. Do you think you maybe intimidate men because A, you are a good looking woman, B, you've got much more sexual experience than guys who probably had three lovers, and C, they don't really know what
Yeah.
they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do think some men feel intimidated. It doesn't help that I'm financially well off either. I think that's intimidating to a lot of people. But I don't think me as a person is intimidating. I think I wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm honest to a fault, so I wish people wouldn't feel intimidated, although I can see how they might. Yeah.
And you kind of just touched on it, but how much different are you than Sylvia? How much of this is an act?
Honestly, I don't think any of it's an act. I live my life as Sylvia. I don't go by my birth name for anything unless you're buying me a plane ticket. So I pretty much live life as Sylvia. Everything I do is tied together, from my, the comedy to adult world, and my free time, even everything I do is still tied into one. And so I think Sylvia is all the time the same. Even when I go to set, I'm still this person. I'm still this loud, laughing, manic person on set. So, yeah, all the time. Sylvia's all the time.
And when you assuming you have time off and you're not doing silly interviews like this, what do you like to do?
Oh my gosh. Well, I love to hike. I will be outside. I mean, the moment I get off this interview, I'm going hiking. So, well, that's not true. I have one more call and then going hiking. But I just love being outdoors. I live in Santa Monica, so I'm about a mile out from the beach. So I will walk to the beach and just go, just take in the people. You know, I love being anything outdoors, but not cold, warm outdoors.
And with the event of OnlyFans, do you have you given yourself a how long you want to be in this business? I'm sorry.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd like to think that like 10 years is a good solid number to kind of shoot for other companies. So that might be where I'm at, kind of leaving shooting for other companies in the next year or so, just because the comedy career has taken such an uptick that I would like to pursue that hardcore. But my OnlyFans is going to be around as long as OnlyFans exists. So, and when OnlyFans goes away, we will find another platform. I think I will always be making content for my people. I truly enjoy it. I mean, who doesn't want to get paid to masturbate? It's one of the best things, one of the
Yeah.
best jobs I could ever ask for.
Are you happy where your career is at an adult? Do you think you've established yourself and what you want to be and all that?
Yes and no. I am happy. I do feel like I'm, among the top people in the industry. So I feel good about that. I would like to have a MILF Performer of the Year under my belt before I leave. That would be a nice way to go out. But it doesn't have to happen that way. But I'd like to at least get one award acknowledging my hard work. I've been nominated, but never won a category. So that would be nice to walk away with at least a trophy.
And awards aside, is there any one part of this whole journey, I guess we'll call it for sake of discussion, that like blows your mind?
Oh my gosh, all of it. I, um, I never in a million years would have thought I would have worked in adult films. I mean, even when I left Kansas City, everyone knew I was leaving for comedy. And in the last 2 years before I left for Los Angeles, I was working at Twin Peaks, the restaurant, and my colleagues and my patrons coming into the bar, they would all say the same thing. They'd be like, oh, well, if comedy doesn't work out, you can always get into porn. And I used to be so offended. And I was like, I would never, like, I can't even believe you think of me like that. Because again, I had this negative connotation of what the adult industry was. And I would have never in a million years thought I would be doing this. And comedy, although it was something I wanted to do, I never thought I would be at the level I am now, which is just I just get mind blown by it all the time. And I sometimes am just driving around Los Angeles down the PCH or up the 101 and see the Hollywood sign. And I'm like, I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe I've lasted 9 years in this city and not just lasted, thriving. I have a beautiful home. I drive my dream car. I feel like life couldn't be better. And I pinch myself all the time that I'm here. I'm just so happy every day that I've managed to not only just hang in there, but like sail to the top. Always impressed.
And you kind of touched on it, but you go back to Kansas City now. Your friends, nobody's
I do.
surprised by it, not surprised. Everybody just, it's just part of you.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's surprised, honestly. Like I said, it felt like a pretty natural transition for me, given, my life and kind of what I had been doing all along. So I don't think anyone's blown away by it. Everyone's super respectful. In the beginning, people were not respectful when they first found out, I was doing adult. And of course, that's the time I was doing these CD movies, not top production movies or anything like that. And that's what people were seeing. And there was a lot of negative coming with that. I can't believe she moved out there to do comedy and now she's doing porn. Like, what a sad person. But now that I'm successful, it's a totally different tune when I go out there. Now everyone's like, oh, we're so proud of you and we're your biggest fans. I'm like, okay. But yeah, a little too late, but yeah.
Anything you want to say to all of your fans?
Oh my gosh. I just love my fans so much. I'm so grateful to them. Honestly, my life is possible because of them. I love meeting my fans. I always tell people, if you see me in public, please come up and say hello. I will always take a picture. I'm always just so grateful for them and to them. And yeah, thank you.